Picture this: July 8th, 1947. A press release shocks America. Flying disc recovered in Roswell, New Mexico. The collective world gasps. Then military officials flip the story, calling it a weather balloon. But did they? Or was this just the opening move in a nuclear era national security chess game? Tonight, Chuck Zukowski walks us through a riveting new analysis: how Roswell wasn't just UFO lore, it was a strategic play in Cold War intelligence. Chuck Zukowski is a veteran UFO and paranormal investigator with over 35 years of field research, known for his skeptical approach and hands on experiments. He was the focus of the best selling book, The 37th Parallel, and hosted Alien Highway on the Travel Channel. He shares his ongoing work at UFOnut.com, and we are lucky to have him join us here this evening on the very best in paranormal talk radio. This is my Paranormal 60.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney. He won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Good evening, my darklings. Thank you so much for joining us here this evening. A couple of quick things to make a mention of. Next week's going to be a little bit different. Monday, we're going to do a special presentation. It'll be an episode that I did for the Paranormal 360 over on WCCO Radio. I interviewed Jessica Blunt, and we had an amazing conversation, one that I thought warranted being heard here. And since I will be out of town next week filming, I wanted to play that for you. But Wednesday night next week, there will be a brand new interview specifically for the Paranormal 60. We're going to cover things that weren't covered on that other interview. Jessica Blunt will be my guest next Wednesday as well. But Dave, what about the Paranormal 60 news? Where is the news crew? Where's Chachi? Where's the Colonel? Where is Sweet Tea and Greg, the paranormal detective? Well, until I can get some of the stuff figured out with the audio issues that we've been having recently, we're going to put the Paranormal 60 news on hiatus. It seems when there's more than one or two people on, audio is going all over the place. So we are trying to dedicate ourselves to bring you a better product, a better program. And as much fun as we have here doing that, our first kind of promise to you is to continue to bring decent programming, which means good audio as well. Hopefully we'll have this figured out the next 2 to 3 weeks so that when I'm back in 2 weeks, we'll be back live with the Paranormal 60 news crew or shortly thereafter. So I wanted to just give you that quick little heads up. Before we launch into tonight's episode, I do want to tell you there's a brand new movie coming out this Friday. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. Megan 2.0 is in theaters June 27th. For those of you that caught the first Megan, it was an interesting twist on the horror genre, right? Creating an AI that starts to take its job maybe a little too seriously, as Megan, the robotic AI doll, is tasked with protecting a young girl, and just watching over her, she takes her job a little bit too seriously and becomes very violent. If you've seen the very first Megan, you'll know where we were going. Well, Megan 2.0 comes out this Friday, and I had a chance to see it in a sneak preview last night with some of you, my darklings here in the Twin Cities area. And I was very skeptical going into this, to be honest with you. Now, Blumhouse always delivers, in my opinion, some great movies. There have been very few misses and so many hits. But on this one, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. As the movie unspooled, I found myself really enjoying all the different aspects. They didn't just lean into the same tropes. They kind of reinvented this genre in a sense. You're going to notice nods to some other famous sci-fi movies, and I think they do it in a fun, fascinating way. There's a lot of twists and turns throughout the movie, and a couple of points where it is just laugh out loud funny on purpose. They're not going for a moment that they miss that makes it unintentionally funny. It's just really a well done flick. I don't think it's going to win any Oscars because unfortunately good sci-fi rarely does. But in this instance, I feel that this was a little less horror and a little bit more sci-fi with some humor thrown in. But it was well done, well acted, and a lot of fun. And I actually would not be opposed to Megan 3.0 at some point down the future, or I, Megan, whatever comes next. But I wanted to let you know, on the whole scale of 1 to 5 phantoms, 1 means don't bother. 5 means, why are you still listening to me? You should be at the movie theater right now. I'm going to give Megan a secure 3.75 in the Phantom department. So I definitely think it's worth checking out, going out and seeing it on the big screen. There's some cool action, funny lines. Like I said, some really good bits that I think you're going to enjoy. That is my take on Megan 2.0. It's out this Friday, June 27th. Now, I'm also heading out this week to begin filming more for Paranormal Mysteries with my pal Shane Pittman and Cindy Keza. The series will begin airing this September 2025 on Stream Beacon TV. If you haven't already downloaded Stream Beacon and signed up or subscribed to it, this is a good time. Go check out the other properties and projects that they have on there, and then prep yourself, because we will be coming in hot mid-September. It will run through the end of October, and we hope that you'll take the journey along with our team. Again, from the Holzer Files, we are back, Cindy, Shane, and Dave with Paranormal Mysteries. Let's get to tonight's topic. I've had a chance to meet with Chuck at a few different conferences. Of course, I was a fan of their TV show. I've had him on my radio show in the past. And there recently was an article out that I thought was fascinating and well worth examining, especially because this far along in the Roswell history and story, what more is there to talk about? What more is there to uncover, or still revealing itself? You might be surprised. Chuck Zukowski joining us now. Chuck, thanks a lot for being here this evening.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, that was a pretty cool introduction. And Megan 2.0, I haven't seen it yet, but I was a fan of the first movie, so I'm looking forward to it. I thought it was pretty cool the way they kind of brought her to life. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think if you were a fan of that first one, you're going to enjoy the second one. It'll be a fun little twist on what you might be used to. Chuck,
of course, we have to wait till 2027 for Spaceballs.
Right. You know, it's funny. I worked at a movie theater back when I was a teenager, and I remember we had a teaser movie poster that came in, and it said Spaceballs 3 in search of Spaceballs 2. They just jumped over Spaceballs 2 and just had gone straight to Spaceballs 3. And I was really excited thinking that movie was going to come out. It never made its way out, but you're right. Spaceballs 2 is finally going to make its way out, and Mel Brooks is returning as Yogurt. So yes, he'll be 900 years old. He'll finally be the official age of the character he's portraying. Let's dive in, because this is some weird and exciting stuff to kind of chat about, right? I mean, Roswell's still on the minds of many people, and I think, like many people, Chuck, I've flip-flopped on the subject. Sometimes I feel like, wow, this is obviously a UFO. Then there are other times I stand back and I go, I think maybe the government was doing something underhanded, and they thought with the flashbang of UFO and then covering it up would kind of throw people off its curve. And then too many people seem to come forward that had knowledge and information about it, and really leaning into that. And then meeting Jesse Marcel Jr., having a chance to have lunch with him, sit down with him and talk the year before he passed away. I really became a believer again in something crashed at Roswell. There's no doubt about that. And I believe that it was something out of this world. Talk us through this new article and what you guys have been going through. And this is exciting too, because you and your partner in this actually uncovered a few secrets that, and we'll get into that science is backing the claims that what happened at Roswell is not a normal crash, right?
Absolutely. And Jesse Marcel Jr., I was not really good friends, but he knew who I was. And believe it or not, Dave, I was the only one, if not the first one, because I'm not quite sure if he went back out there again, but I took him to the debris site first. He'd never been there. No one ever suggested or offered. And I offered, one time I was lecturing there and he was too busy. And the next time I lectured there and he was there, I offered to take him out to the debris site, and he agreed. So I got to see firsthand the first time Jesse Marcel Jr. was at the debris site, and he was walking around. We let him go. We left him alone because he took off, and we showed him the general area, and he spent a good half hour just by himself. I'm sure he was rethinking everything that happened when he was 8 or 9 years old. What happened with his dad, and to me, it was really. I mean, I don't want to get emotional on this, but it was really a touching moment for me because I've been involved in Roswell. Have to be close to over 30 years now. When we lived in California, almost 35 years. When we lived in California, and my family was young, we had bought a travel trailer so we could go on vacations, and I would always go to Roswell first and do some investigations there and some research, and then we'd take off somewhere else. So I got to meet Walter Hott and Glenn Dennis, and over a period of years, they knew who I was. And then Glenn Dennis, the mortician, was the one who gave me the GPS coordinates to the BLM marker that was the closest to the debris site. And then he walked me, he told me how to get to the debris site from that. It was only 40 yards, 50 yards away from the BLM marker, so it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't anything hard to find.
Chuck, can you let me know real quick on this? One thing I've always been kind of confused on, trying to understand, they call it the Roswell UFO crash, but didn't the crash actually happen outside of Roswell? It wasn't actually in Roswell, right?
Exactly. It was more near Corona. It was in Lincoln County. And the reason why they call it the Roswell crash is because of the RAF, the Roswell Army Air Force Base, was the key player in all this. But Mac Brazel, D. Proctor, all those guys are out of Corona. And so I would actually go to Corona too, which is just this little tiny town. And eventually over the years, I just forgot her name. Oh, I'm so sorry. I got to interview the historian, Corona historian, and she was she was 99 years old, I think, when I talked to her, and she knew a lot, and she knew Mac, and she knew D. Proctor, she knew the key players, and when I talked to her about Roswell, she had some really good information. Yeah, something happened. Yeah, the military's there. Yeah, this and that. And even because I'm a cattle mutilation investigator too, just out of a whim, I asked her, was there any issues with local animals, being sick? And she actually said that she had, because she ran a drugstore, and the drugstore would have medical supplies for the ranchers because they didn't have a vet there. And she said she does remember for about a week or so after the Roswell incident, a couple of ranchers were coming in and asking if she'd heard of some type of virus that was killing the cows. And she thought it was kind of interesting, but what really stuck in her mind were the cows were bleach white. So they actually were bleached. So the cows that were dying, their skin was bleached, which I'd never heard of that before. But if it wasn't for me asking her and getting all this information, I never would have been able to tie that in too. So maybe there were some animals infected with whatever happened there, which obviously isn't a weather balloon or Project Mogul. Now, I did an archaeology dig for the Sci-Fi Channel. I think it was back in September 2002. I got some notes here because I got two monitors.
Sure.
And what's really interesting, it was for Sci-Fi, and we had volunteer archaeologists, and I was like one of two actual investigators that were the volunteers. And I didn't like where they had us digging because it didn't make sense. And they had us digging way too deep. It was just for TV. So I convinced the lead archaeologist, Dr. Bill Dolman, if I could come back. Actually, my sister was with me. Come back the following day after filming, while he was cleaning the site up, and allow me to do my own dig. And I had learned with my wife, we did an archaeology dig years before at an Anasazi site over in New Mexico. And there was 1 meter by 5 meter strip digs, about maybe 8 to 10 inches deep. And we were finding a lot of artifacts. Well, I wanted to do the same thing there. So I went to Dr. Dolman, and he agreed, and we came back the next day. But this time I walked over to him and says, okay, do you want to dig over here? I said, no, that's not where I want to dig. He goes, well, where do you want to dig? And I said, okay, Mr. Spock, because he's an archaeologist and a minor in
Right.
geology. I said, okay, Mr. Spock, over the past, whatever it was, 60 some years or whatever it was back then, since the Roswell incident, where would the water, where would, debris would have flown from this hill area or this area and settled due to erosion? Take me to the part where, you think you see the most erosion. And he says, oh, that's simple. It's over there, and he showed me, and we started digging there. Actually, I started digging. My sister was sifting. And on the second dig, we found a little piece of metal. We were there the whole week before with the Sci-Fi Channel. Didn't find anything, right? Anything that resembled what, Mac Brazel had seen. And lo and behold, here's this little tiny piece of triangular metal about the size of your fingernail. And it was extremely light. And when it hit the sun, all three corners curled up. You put it back in a manila envelope, the archaeology envelope, and it would flatten back out again. Take it back out in the sun. Now, I don't know if it was conducive to light or to solar radiation, but it curled up again. So for a few years after that, the Maxwell Museum in New Mexico had that piece, and I finally convinced them to let me borrow it and do a test on it. And they did. And I was going to go pick it up, and they mailed it to me. I'm like, oh my God, no.
Wow.
Don't mail it to me, but it's
Right.
too late. I got it in the mail because I was going to drive from Colorado Springs back down to, to Albuquerque and pick it up. So I got it, and I took it to a scanning electron microscope, and it was an aluminum alloy. And the properties were really interesting. So I go, okay. So I got as far as I needed. I could go with what I had available to me at the time, meaning, lab. So I did a press release in Roswell a year later. I think it was a little while after that, probably around 2011 or so, because the museum had the artifact for a while, and it took me a bit to get it. So I did a press release asking for help, and guess who offered to help? Robert Bigelow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Bass comes in and says, yeah. And I showed him, this is our initial, stuff that we found. And then they grabbed it. But I wasn't stupid. I had to do all the paperwork to get it released from from the museum. So I had him cut a piece off of it and send a piece to Bigelow because I didn't want this thing just to disappear. And so we sent him a piece. Within 1 week after his scientists had it, I got an email back saying it's an unknown polymer. In other words, it's a non-registered metal, is what he was saying.
Okay.
And I said, well, what's next? And he said, not Bigelow, but the scientist I was talking to, or the lab guy. He said, well, we're going to do isotope analysis. I'm like, great. I'm all excited. Okay, isotope analysis is going to tell us whether or not it's from here. And that was it. Never heard from him again for almost a year. Multiple times I contacted them. They never would respond. Oh, well, somebody else is doing this. Oh, we moved it to that department. It was the old runaround, typical runaround. And then a year later, I get this email going, oh, it was nothing. I'm going, bullshit. I don't know if I can say bullshit on your show, but sorry.
Well, you just said it twice, so I guess we'll find out when the FCC shuts me down, Chuck.
BS.
Right.
I said, you already told me it was unknown. And so that drove me to, okay, I need to get back and see if I could find some more. And since then, after that area, the couple ranches around that area had been bought and sold, and there were some issues getting out to the site because we had a ranch approval to go through his, ranch to get to the site. The site's on BLM land, which they can't kick you off of, except, government could. But you would have to cut across private property to get there. So it took a bit until figured out that there was a slice of BLM land, like a little narrow roadway that was it was just like a little, not even a ranch road, more like just a ranch trail of some using trucks. And that was on BLM. So we could slide in that way. And that's when I hooked up with Frank Kibler, who was a geologist, and he teaches at the Military Institute in Roswell. And we found more metal. Actually, what I did was the first time he found some metal, and I was having problems with my metal detector trying to find some. I came back again with a newer metal detector, and lo and behold, the newer metal detector that was designed to detect gold nuggets, right, picked up the stuff like that. It was crazy. And we all of a sudden we found like 6 pieces from different depths, from 4 inches down to almost 10 inches deep out in the middle of the desert. Wow. So now we have some pieces. Like, great. And we also have some other stuff that just, that's not more, that's identifiable. So we were able to compare what was an anomaly and what, oh yeah, this is a piece of a can. Oh yeah, this is a piece of this, piece of that. Yeah. So we had enough pieces now, and between me and Frank and 2 other individuals that worked with us, I don't want to mention their names because they're doing their own thing, but I can tell you that out of the 4 pieces that we had analyzed at 4 separate labs in 4 separate states, California, New Mexico, Colorado, and Texas, all 4 labs said the same thing. It's an unknown non-registered alloy. Okay, so it's non-registered, meaning you can't buy that piece of metal anywhere, which is really interesting. Now, we had 4 separate labs in 4 different states tell us the same things. Now, out of the 4 labs, 3 of them that I was able to talk to the lab techs directly told me that whatever created the samples that we gave them, and it wasn't the same sample, they were 4 different samples, that it was explosive in nature. It was such an explosion that it actually created folds and holes and rips and tears at micron levels, like 50 microns, 100 microns, which is what, 1 times 10 to the minus 6 or something. It's that small. So it was so explosive in nature that it created this debris. So we had at least 3 of the 4 different labs, because I didn't get a chance to talk to the tech at the 4th lab, say the same thing. Whatever caused this exploded in the air and not on the ground, because if it exploded on the ground, there might have been dirt particles impacted in it, and they never saw that. So it exploded, and even some pieces had like a little bit of melting on it. So now I can guarantee you without a shadow of doubt that something did crash at the Roswell debris site. We're guessing where we found it under soil, pushing back to 47. Now, if you're a Roswell investigator, and you've heard the stories of the military being there. There was a gouge. They covered up a gouge with military bulldozers. So that would explain the different depths. Right. But even though it was a different depths, it's same metal. So it's not like I found different metals. So that just proves that somebody was there to try to cover it up, because we found the same metal at different depths. Way, way, way cool. This is a game changer for us, because we proved that something crashed there. Now, is it a flying saucer? Is it extraterrestrial? All I can tell you, it's a bona fide UFO, because it's unidentified. The metal is non-registered, so it's an unidentified metal. And 3 out of the 4 labs said that it was exploded in the air before it impacted the ground. So it is a UFO or UAP, whatever you call it.
We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue to talk, but I want to discuss a theory that popped to brain when you were talking about the reaction of the metal to sunlight, and throw something in your direction to get your, either Dave, you're a genius, or Dave, let's just leave to the scientists to figure this stuff out. Either way, it'll be a good answer for the radio audience. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We've got more with Chuck, and we'll do that right after this.
A vampire in Rhode Island?
A UFO crash in Connecticut?
A flying moose in Maine?
A haunted bridge that calls your name?
New England is weird.
Really weird.
Wicked Strange by Jeff Belanger and Frank Grace is your ticket to the bizarre. Ghosts, monsters, urban legends, and roadside oddities you won't believe until you see them.
So pre-order now on Amazon. It drops September 2nd.
Assuming the Black Dog of West Peak doesn't get you first.
Let's get strange.
Wicked Strange. Pre-order your copy now on Amazon.
Have you ever felt like something or someone was trying to tell you something? That inner nudge. That quiet whisper from the universe. With intuition sharpened by years of spiritual connection and a deep-rooted gift. Winnie Schrader delivers readings that are compassionate, insightful, and shockingly accurate. Whether you're facing a crossroads healing from heartache, or just curious what the cards reveal, Winnie creates a safe, sacred space to explore your journey. This isn't fortune cookie fluff. This is honest. Intuitive guidance from someone who's helped hundreds find clarity, closure, and confidence. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Book your session now at lovelotustarot.com and take control of your journey. That's lovelotustarot.com. Winnie's sessions are personal, powerful, and often life-changing. That's lovelotustarot.com.
Chuck Zukowski, our guest this evening on the Paranormal 60. All right, Chuck, I want to go back to the piece of metal. Obviously, there's been a lot of stories that have been told about the pieces that were recovered that were like an aluminum foil that you could crumple up and it would automatically unfold itself without creases, without folds. It would just simply return to its natural state. That's fascinating. Then there's been talk of, well, there were these I-beams that were found that had these hieroglyph looking images, I guess, on them. That has been quote unquote debunked by the experts by saying, oh, it was just this child's party cellophane tape on a piece of balsa wood. Because obviously Jesse Marcel, who was involved in the bombs that we, dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, couldn't tell the difference between a piece of balsa wood and clear tape with flowers on it. So very strange stories, the way it's all unfolded. Are you familiar with John Searle, Chuck?
No, I'm not.
The Searle effect generator. I had a great chance to interview this gentleman years ago. And fascinating guy. He was able to create a flying disc that he could control with radio frequency, right? Like a remote control craft, but he used rare earth elements.
Okay.
And what he found was that it could fly at unbelievably high speeds. And what they were able to find is that the rare earth elements had a way of pocketing the air in front of it, so there was no resistance. So that's why when you see bicyclers going or even cars on the racetrack, they'll drop in a line behind it so they can take advantage of what they call drafting, right? Which is they're not fighting the resistance the lead car or the lead biker is doing, and then they'll drop into the slip and take over from there. So he believed that this rare earth element and the vibration of it created this pocket that allowed it to move faster than we would have been able to do with a regular craft. As you're explaining this piece of metal that you recovered and the fact that it was flat, and then as you put it in the sunlight of the heat put it in the heat of the sunlight, it would curl up on itself. You'd put it again into the dark and it would unfold. It does make me wonder, right? If this is a craft, so many people are asking about the propulsion possibilities. How does it have this internal propulsion if there's no real machinery found? Which, again, that's speculative. There's a lot of people that say there was machinery found, and we've been back engineering it for years. But it does seem to make sense to me that if something's flying through the sky and it can adjust its own parameters, it would allow itself to create those venting pockets in front, behind. And we hear so much about these craft, even in today's skies, that seem to be amorphous and will go from a disc into a blob shape, into a ball, and then they're gone. So this all seems to fit, right? I mean, do you think that maybe the reason it's curling up is that's just another natural, energetic part of why this metal is so integral to these craft?
Yeah, because...
No, you could stop there. You agreed with me. That's all I
I agree with you. Yeah, that's one of our theories. I've been designing microchips for over 30 years, and so aluminum is used in the metals in submicron microchips, right, to carry current. So I'm very familiar with how aluminum reacts with current. Now, as a UFO investigator and even cattle mutilations investigator, I've picked up high levels of EMF, electromagnetic fields, in places where there's been UFO sightings, in places where there's been cattle mutilations. So it's a high EM field. And matter of fact, I've experienced it multiple times where I'm doing an investigation, something occurs and your batteries drain.
Right.
Our battery drained, my truck battery drained one time. Oh, and it was outside of Roswell, actually. It was near the debris site. So what causes that is our high levels of EMF can cause that disruption. That's why, and ghost investigators, it occurs with ghost investigators all the time because they use an EMF meter, and the same things happen. So if you have the metal itself, now, could the pieces the piece that we found that curled up was flat. It looked like almost like they actually thought it was a wing from an insect. It was that light and that flat. Wow. So it had some creases on it, but along the edges. Maybe that's why I was able to curl up. The stuff that we've been finding has been folded over and folded over. If your viewers want to go to my website and just look up non-registered aluminum metal, or just go through my blogs and look for Roswell stuff, you'll see the pictures under my microscope. You'll see the folds. You'll see everything. And also you'll see the lab results too. I don't hide anything from anybody. It's all out there for people to look at, and you can make your own deductions from it. But so now you have aluminum foil now, or not aluminum foil, but aluminum. You have this aluminum alloy that's conductive or conducive to current. And so let's just say the whole body of the ship is made with something that conducts current. So now your power source isn't just like the amps, gravity amps that Bob Lazar talked about. But let's say that you do have the main power source, but instead of running wires, the whole body of the ship is the wires.
Right.
If the whole body of the ship is conducting a current, and the current is allowing the ship to do things, and you could probably either what Bob Lazar says, bounce off of gravity, B waves or whatever, or propel itself, whatever technology. So we do have some experiments planned. I've been talking to Frank the last month or two of trying to come up with a really good idea. There's one good idea of how to do it, but I don't want to do that. Just putting a piece of the metal in mercury and applying current to the mercury. I don't want to mess with mercury, so I don't want to do that. but putting the metal in some type of fluid and running current through it to see if the metal starts reacting, or using an audio generator and just having the metal sit there, and then use an audio generator and run different frequencies through the audio generator to see if it starts. I mean, it would just blow my mind if it sits there and it starts vibrating and stuff, because then the theory of the metal being part of the propulsion would totally make sense.
Couldn't you possibly even do that with those what are they called? They're the little globes with electricity that's zipping inside of them.
Oh yeah.
Like the Tesla coil.
Yeah, little Tesla.
Right. And they sell those. I mean, that is electricity that's within that bulb, within that dome. If you set it on top of there and turn on the machine, it'll draw the electricity to it, because that's the same with putting your fingers on the bulb, right? The lightning will come up to it. I wonder if that would be enough to stimulate the metal.
That's really, really good idea, and we've already addressed that.
Hold on.
Yes,
you just agree with me twice?
You two now. Yeah, we did that, not using the plasma ball, but we did do something similar to that, and we also tried to apply current in different ways. But you see, you just can't hook a battery up to it, because it's just be a complete short. So you have to figure out how you can put a current. And so static electricity was one of the first things we looked at. That this could actually work. The problem with that is how the intensity or how intense does a static electricity need to be? Does it need, obviously, maybe the plasma ball wasn't strong enough, and we didn't use a plasma ball. Frank used something else. But are we looking at like high voltage lines? Where you get the static electricity off of thousands and thousands of volts, because we don't know what the power source, we don't know the intensity of the power source. These are complete unknowns, just all question marks. So we're trying to come at this from a logical point of view. Okay, we know it's an aluminum alloy. We know it's non-registered. You can't buy it. We know whatever caused the debris to look like it is because it's a massive explosion, but we do know it's conductive to current. Why aluminum? Why a non-registered aluminum alloy? Why aluminum alloy for this? Now, for your viewers too, as far as I know, there might be one rare case I read a little while ago, but as far as I know, every meteorite that's hit, or I should say meteorite that's hit the planet, and I have a ring with has a meteorite on it. The metals in the meteorite have all fallen on our element scales, so they're all recognizable. So they're on the periodic table. Nothing exotic. Now there have been some stories in the past of people saying that they've got a hold of some exotic stuff from a meteorite, but I've never been able to see what elements how exotic that was. But the exotic alloys is different. It's when you take the elements and you put them in such a way that now it becomes an exotic metal. So could it came from outer space? Well, absolutely, because so far everything that's impacted the planet that came from outer space falls on our periodic table. So yeah, aluminum, But when it's an alloy, though, when it has other things in it, then you're looking at it going, okay, this was made. Well, we know it was made just because of the pieces. And like I said to your viewers, if you go to my website and you go to those blogs that have it, you can see what the piece looks like. You can see the size. You can see it 50 microns, 500 microns. If I could share my screen, I'd probably show it to you. But
we've got a link for your website on tonight's show. So we will let people find it very easily. So whether you're watching live or listening to the replay of the show or listening to the podcast version, there is a link to ufo.com where you could just find it that easily and go check it out there. Let's dive into the other element of this discussion, the Cold War aspects of it, what happened, why did this start kind of the national defense system into place? What can we tell about this? Because there does seem to be some disinformation, misinformation, and information that coexist all together that seem that they should repel one another, but at points they seem to come together.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that was my recent blog. That was UFOs, Roswell, National Security. So I'm kind of reading this real quick, so I want to make sure that that the dates are right. So you have June 24th, 1947, was the Kenneth Arnold sighting,
Right.
of Mount Rainier. And then, of course, in 47, just a couple days after that, the term flying saucer was coined because the reporters, they couldn't figure out how to describe what Kenneth Arnold saw. So they said it looked like these saucers skipping. So that's what flying saucer came from. Then on July 3rd, 4th weekend, the next date is kind of debatable. Now you had the Roswell incident. Okay, so now whatever happened at Roswell started this chain reaction. So in July 26th of 1941, a couple weeks after Roswell, President Truman signed the National Security Act. All right. And that happened on July 26th. And then shortly after was the National Security Council was created. Then the Joint Chiefs of Staff was created. Then the CIA was established. And then the Department of Defense was established right after that. And really, then you had September 18th, 1947, the Air Force was established. Before that, it was the Army Air Corps. So this chain of events just magically or coincidentally started occurring after the 1947 event. Started with, the Mount Rainier, event that kind of started things going. Actually, the Kenneth Arnold Mount Rainier stirred up. If you talk to, I was able to talk to one person years and years and years ago that actually guarded debris at the hangar at Roswell Army Air Force Base, and he said, because he had worked within the radar, but back then it was direct beam radar. It wasn't Doppler like we have now. But we found out that Roswell Army Air Force Base had radar, White Sands Missile Base had radar, and there was a third radar that was placed somewhere over by El Capitan Mountains or out that way. And they were triangulating that whole area because they actually had UFO sightings going over the Roswell Corona area, so they were tracking them. That's how they were able to see him, in the July of 47, because they were actively looking for him after the Kenneth Arnold. And there were some other sightings too that we have heard about that never went public, that military radar back in the day was picking up.
Chuck, and just out of curiosity, the radar, the microwave technology and things that were being utilized, you ever throw a piece of aluminum foil into a microwave, even for a few seconds, it starts sparking and causing all kinds of problems. Could one of these craft have accidentally, while being tracked, passed through a configuration of these radars talking to one another that actually caused the crash or caused the
I see. Now that's 3. You're 3 for 3 now.
I'm calling it a day. After this, I'm shutting the show down. I've never been right 3 times.
You're good to go. So my main theory, and other theories too that we all follow kind of the same, is that there was a lightning, there was a storm. Everybody agrees there was a storm at the time. So now you have this massive electromagnetic field happening in the clouds. If you've ever been out in the Roswell area during a lightning storm, man, it is phenomenal what's going on out there. And so now you got that going out there. Now you have the Roswell radar, you have the White Sands radar, and you have this third radar that is it's not a stationary radar, it's a portable radar, but they had put it out there. Now you have 3 radars triangulating in that area. So you have these 2 craft going. Now let's say that we're correct that the metal of the craft were made up of this type of aluminum alloy that is conductive of current, and it has its own current, its own power source that's moved trucking along. Then you have this static explosions from lightning, and lightning. As of yet, they cannot pinpoint how many amps a lightning bolt can strike. It's an unknown. They haven't. They thought they don't know. They don't know how many volts, and they don't know how many amps yet. That's still how known. That's how great these lightning strikes are. We just don't know. I mean, just touching your finger when you want to electric shock somebody else after rubbing your feet on the ground, that could be 70,000 volts coming off your little fingertip.
That's gigawatts, Marty.
Yeah, not gigawatts, but very, very low current though. So now you have all this going on in the clouds, and then you have the radar beams hitting, and we don't know. My theory is it disrupted their propulsion system. Now, people had seen them flying in formation going back to Kenneth Arnold, and they've seen them flying in formation. Matter of fact, there was 2 nuns at Roswell sitting on top of a building, story goes, and they were smoking cigarette break. I guess it's okay for nuns to smoke cigarettes back then. Sure. And they're the ones that said they saw it too. And then there was another couple that was sitting on their front porch, and they saw it. So we've had some eyewitness reports that there were 2. So now you got them flying side by side. You got all this going on in the atmosphere. You got direct beam radar hitting. They hit each other. Now, if they touch each other and they're both current sources, can they do that? I don't know. Or do they short? I don't know. I mean, they're not designed to play bumper cars with each other. So that could be another thing we have to throw in there too. And so all of a sudden, and then so one comes down, and over by Roswell, and they hit the debris site. They skip like you would skip a flying saucer. I'm sorry. You would skip a Frisbee. So you take a Frisbee and you skip it off a sidewalk, it skips. So that's like a flying saucer coming down. It comes down and it skips. It leaves all that debris. And about 17 miles later, it impacts. Then you have the plains of St. Augustine, supposedly where the other one went down. And Chuck Wade was the investigator that was looking, into that one. And he had some debris from that. But I got to see the debris. I never got to see it analyzed. So that's
not debris like this.
Well, right? Not to the intensity that we did it, because of having a background in microchip design, I'm very technical, very analytical. Dealing with Frank Kibler, who, geologist, professor at the Military Institute, he's very analytical too. So you got two minds that are going at this. Matter of fact, when Frank and I started working together, you talk about just stuff that just works. Okay. And I do believe, I joke all the time that we're living in a simulation and somebody is just doing all this. I can't even tell you how I know that. It's just that anytime I go out in the middle of the night somewhere, there's going to be one lone car on the highway. I got to wait for it to pass me by so I can leave.
Right.
It could be any time in the middle of the night. It's always going to happen to me. It's just perfect. So, so it turns out that Frank and I, we went to elementary school together in this little tiny town in Arizona called Safford. And we're at the same elementary school at the same time, in first grade and second grade. So we probably actually played with each other. Played together.
Yeah, right. I'm not here to judge, Chuck.
No, yeah,
we all went through experimental phases, right?
Exactly. No, not when I was 5 or 6. So we probably played together because I was always hanging around the other boys, and and anyway, we later found out we were on our way out to Roswell. It's a 2.5 hour to the debris site. It's about 2.5 hour drive, and we're just shooting, talking and stuff, and found out that we went to the same elementary school. So it's weird how the cosmos kind of puts people together that are previously connected, and we just hit it off. I mean, we're both the same age, and we just very comfortable working with each other, and he's just so much of a pleasure to work with. He's more, he's not as aggressive as I am, so he holds me back a little bit. But
we have to take another quick break. When we come back, let's talk about the Disinformation Act, all the things that were going on with this. As you said, there was definitely something that crashed. We can call it a UFO because it fits the parameters of being unidentified. It was flying and it's an object of sorts. But as we roll this out a little bit in the last 10 minutes together, does Chuck Zukowski believe that this is alien in nature? Is it just advanced science that we have not quite figured out, or maybe a little bit of both? We'll talk about that when we return. Stay tuned to the very best in paranormal discussions. This is the Paranormal 60.
Hey everybody, it's me, Bigfoot, and boy do I have something to tell you. So there I was, deep in the forest, minding my own business, snacking on berries, avoiding tourists, and trying to stream the live video of the Paranormal 60 podcast. Notice I said trying. But thanks to my old cell carrier, no signal, or slow and spotty at best. And worst of all, the astronomical bills. Now, I might be a magical beast, but I still got a budget. That's when I stomped my way over to Mint Mobile. Man, that Ryan Reynolds is during me. And Mint Mobile plans were starting at just $15 a month. Mint Mobile gives you premium wireless service on the nation's largest 5G network. Yup, even works here in the woods. Don't ask how. I know nothing of your human sorcery or satellites. Either way, now I can FaceTime the Chupacabra with zero lag. You ever try explaining roaming fees to a Wendigo? It doesn't end well. Mint Mobile lets you keep your own phone, your own number, and all your contacts, so I didn't even lose Mothman's digits. Plus, no cryptic contracts or shady surprise charges. I use Mint Mobile, and if you've seen my footprint, you know I don't make small decisions. So listen, humans, this summer, skip breaking the bank, and you're back hauling in another overpriced bill. Head on over to mintmobile.com/P60 and start saving like a legend. That's mintmobile.com/P60. facebook.com/P60. There's a link for it in today's program guide. Oh, and here's the legalese. Upfront payment of $45 for just 3-month 5-gigabyte plan required, which is equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for the first 3 months only. Then, full price plan options are available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Did you know that radio just got a little extraterrestrial? That's right, Dave Schrader is back on radio with the Paranormal 360 every Sunday evening, 7 to 9 p.m. Central on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station. Just download the Odyssey app and look for the WCCO logo, follow the station, and listen live. That's the Paranormal 360 on WCCO AM 830, an Odyssey station.
Hey, folks, this Sunday, I'm being preempted for the Minnesota Twins game, so I will not be on WCCO, but there will be another episode of the Paranormal 360. We're going to place up a special, I guess, what do you call it, a revisited episode of the Paranormal Ranger, Navajo Ranger, and talk about skinwalkers, UFOs, and more. So check that out. It'll be on the podcast version. You can subscribe to Paranormal 360 wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Chuck Zukowski, our guest this evening on the Paranormal 60. We've got about 10 minutes left together, Chuck. Let's talk a little bit about the secrecy surrounding this. Why come out and admit that it's a downed craft, to just pull it back and then say it's a weather balloon, then pull it back and it's Project Mogul, and then pull it back and, well, it's a secret of that. Why all this shell game going on?
It's really interesting. When I first started doing this 30 some years ago, before the internet, there was a lot of research that was done in libraries and books and other things. And then as the internet came out, I actually found a couple of things before it exploded. Back in 47, 48, there was something that was very similar to, or like the National Disinformation Act, which was really interesting. And somewhere in all my archives and all the books and stuff I have, I think I actually have paperwork on it. I found something close to it called the Smith-Mund Act of 48 that was introduced in 47. I'm not quite sure if that's exactly the same thing. But basically, it's to allow the government to give disinformation to the public legally. Now, we did know that back in the 40s and 50s that, and I'm sure you probably talked about it on your show sometime before, where the government legally was able to conduct experiments on American people. And there's a story of releasing a flu-type virus in San Francisco, I know, decades ago, and people actually died from it, senior citizens stuff. And they were just basically allowed to use Americans as guinea pigs. Well, back in the 40s and the 50s, and there was a lot of UFO sightings in the 50s, that some of the UFO sightings was disinformation. That's what you've been seeing in the news lately. Like, people are saying, well, the government or the CIA or whoever, they've been actually utilizing disinformation, putting false information about UFOs and flying, well, let's just say just UFO events occurring or sightings to cover up, black projects, basically, or skunk work projects. And we kind of knew that anyway. I actually tracked down, I kind of found out about the F-11-7A. There were some UFO sightings over by Edwards Air Force Base, and I was in California at the time, and I was able to track it down and talk to the townspeople in that area and found out that, hey, it's a black project. It's a secret airplane. Once I found that out, that's it. I don't go public. I have 2 sons in the military, so, I'm not going to put our military at risk, especially, if it's something like that. But
Right.
To me, as an investigator, I knew any type of UFO sightings in that time frame around Edwards Air Force Base was most likely this stealth airplane. So we kind of know that stuff. But we also knew that back in the 40s and early 50s that the government had this Disinformation Act, that they were allowed to give false information. Now, how they act, from what I can remember, it was like you have to you have to give some truth, which means maybe 10 to 8% of the story has to be some truth, but the rest could be just a lie. So you couldn't outright lie to the American people without telling them, well, you could tell them a lot of untruth and a little tiny bit of truth. And that's how they got away with it. And they're talking about it now, but it's been going on for so long, and they're still doing it. Of course they would, the SR-71,
Right.
people saw that. And so to keep it off of the radar, they, of pointing to the military, they would just say, oh man, there's a UFO sighting, and they release that information. It's so much easier now with social media to get out there and just flood it with a lot of disinformation to to hide things.
But Chuck, do you believe that what happened in Roswell was in fact alien craft in nature, or do you think that it was something bigger that we were experimenting with that we got caught with our pants down?
Everything that I've investigated points to aliens. And I'll tell you why, because I've had the opportunity to know Glenn Dennis personally and Walter Hott, who were the key players. Glenn Dennis was was the mortician at I forget Bailey something, mortuary.
And he's the one that had received the call for like 3 or 4 child-sized
cat. And then it was interesting, so much interesting too, because everybody thought that his friend, the girlfriend who was a nurse, mysteriously died in a plane crash, and she just disappeared. She was the one that witnessed the autopsy. And and now that he's gone, I have no problems talking about this, but we had some really good long conversations, and finally he goes, she still lived in Roswell. Yeah. She was still alive, and she lived in Roswell. They just got her out of it. And,
Gotcha.
that's all. They just moved her out and away and to cover the story up. So no, nothing ever happened to her, but, it was, oh my God, a big conspiracy theory. No, they still talk to each other. And he did say that, she did see the bodies, and then I interviewed a guy named Eli, who's no longer with us, that I told you that, that actually guarded the wreckage. And he remembered seeing way off in the distance body bags too, which we thought it was interesting. Okay. Now here's something else interesting too. So at the end of the runway at Roswell Armory Air Force Base, what he described, there was an airplane there, and they had like an opening in the ground, and they would bring artillery ordnances up from underground, and they would, mount it on the airplanes. And they were able to do that because it's away from all the hangars and it's safe for everybody, right? Well, where you would load the ordnance from underground, there was a fence, okay, a non-see-through fence that was around that. There was guards in the fence. Then there was guards outside the fence, and there was a second fence or perimeter around that. And then there was a third fence around that, and there was guards inside each one. So why would you do that? Because they're transporting debris. Why would you do that if it's Project Mogul?
Right, if it's just a weather balloon.
Or a weather balloon. I mean, really, Project Mogul was top secret. The project was top secret, not the materials. The balloons were normal high altitude balloons, fragments. We've never found any of that. And from what I've heard and talking to the experts from that era, that the materials, the electronics was something that, let's say, you could buy at Radio Shack. Okay. So it wasn't anything top secret. So the technology wasn't top secret, just what it was doing was top secret.
Right.
Really, really interesting. So in my opinion, based on eyewitness testimonies of what I've seen, I think they're aliens. Absolutely.
Very cool. There's a lot more information at Chuck's website, and you can dig into the article and the essays and things that he's written there to understand and get some more information about it. Chuck, after we say goodnight to the audience, stay with me, because you and I have something I have to share with you off air, and kind of interesting. So thank you again, Chuck. It's always great catching up with you. And as more things are coming out, I'd love to have you back, maybe even as kind of a guy who's looking at this through the skeptical lens, to help us understand what it means when these news stories are coming out and what what is actually happening. Are we releasing information? Are we still hiding information? Is this, shaking the right hand so that the left hand can do something shady while everybody's in shock and awe? Just to give us some insights as these stories unfold and they continue to come out over the next few years. Will you do that with us, Chuck?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we actually covered stuff like that with Alien Highway. We had a government informant that was, guiding us to certain areas where debris might have been,
Right.
stored at Roswell. So to all your viewers out there, you visit my website, you have any questions at all, I answer all my emails. Okay. Try not to write a book
Right.
when you email me, because I usually people that write like a book to me, I tend to leave them towards the last because I get a lot of emails and I try and kick out as quick as I can.
Right. Yeah. Well, Chuck, thank you very much. And again, folks, there's a link for Chuck and his website on tonight's program guide, so you can find it there. Hey, I got a lot of cool things coming up here soon. I'm going to be at the 2025 Illinois Paranormal Conference, July 12th, and it is going to be at Rockford, Illinois. You'll be able to come on out, see us, have a great time as well. And then Broadhead Manor's Paranormal Rockdown is going to be taking place in July 18th and 19th in Wisconsin. And then later on, it's Christmas in July at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. I'll be there along with many of our fan favorites from all the different paranormal TV shows. And I think they just added Russ Acord from Expedition Bigfoot. So hopefully we'll see you out there to be a part of this with us. I want to just thank all of you for taking a little bit of time to spend here with us this evening. And of course, to Chuck Zukowski for giving us information, insights, and sharing some really cool details a lot of you might not have known. So from secret CIA panels like Robertson's in 1953, sporadically just kind of dismissing UFOs as misidentifications, to the rise of Project Mogul as the likely Roswell culprit, tonight's conversation with Chuck Zukowski invites us to really rethink Roswell, not as a simple alien crash site myth, but as a reflection of Cold War anxiety, national security strategy, and the U.S. government's longstanding impulse to control the narrative. So whether the truth is top secret tech or etch mark debris, one thing is clear. Roswell changed how we see both UFOs and the intelligence that shapes our world. May the darkness of this world be just a little brighter with the light that we share here on the program. And thank you all for tuning in. Stay curious, stay skeptical, keep your eyes to the skies, and we'll see you again next time right here on the Paranormal 60.